On our second wedding anniversary, my husband tossed an unlimited black card onto the table and told me to spend whatever I wanted. He had only one condition: I was not to interrupt his date with his first love. What he did not seem to remember was that, in 2 years of marriage, he had never once touched me. That card was the first thing he had ever willingly placed in my hands. Before midnight, his phone received its 37th payment alert: a couture gown, diamond earrings, a presidential suite, a private band, and an anniversary party featuring 12 male dancers. By the time he abandoned his first love and stormed into the hotel, I was sitting beneath the lights with a glass of champagne raised, celebrating the fact that I no longer loved him. The next morning, I placed divorce papers on his desk. And it had all begun with a dinner that went completely cold. At 4 that afternoon, I started preparing our anniversary meal. I moved the dining table beside the floor-to-ceiling windows, where the Hudson River reflected the lights of Manhattan. I roasted rosemary steak, Alexander's favorite, opened a bottle of wine he had been saving for years, and put on a dark blue dress. Months earlier, at a formal dinner, he had casually remarked that blue suited me. It was the only comment he had made about my appearance in 2 years. I had remembered it far longer than I should have. Beside his plate sat a silver gift box. Inside was an antique cuff link that had belonged to his grandfather. It had broken at a reception the year before, and Alexander had tossed it into a drawer. I spent 3 months finding a craftsman willing to restore it using the original technique. At 7, the steak went cold for the first time. At 7:40, a third of the candles had burned away. At 8:06, I finally heard the front door open. I stood at once, wearing the smile I had rehearsed far too many times. "Dinner is ready." Alexander did not remove his coat. The cold of a New York winter clung to him. His gaze moved from the table to my face, not with surprise, but with the impatience of a man who had been delayed. "I only came back to tell you I won't be eating here tonight." My fingers tightened around the back of the chair. "It's our anniversary." "I know." He checked his watch. "Sophia came back to New York today. She just landed, and she's upset. I promised I would have dinner with her." Sophia Reed. Her name had lived inside our marriage for 2 years like a knife hidden in velvet. She was Alexander's first love, the woman in the old photograph at the bottom of his desk drawer, and the shadow that appeared in his eyes whenever I tried to get close to him. I had spent 2 years telling myself that the photograph belonged to the past and our marriage belonged to the present. But Alexander had never stayed in my bedroom. He had never truly kissed me. On our wedding night, he stood in the doorway and told me our marriage was nothing more than a corporate arrangement. He would give me the title of Mrs. Grant, enough money, and a respectable life. He would not give me love. He had agreed to marry me because Carter Industries owned the core patent grant group needed for its new energy division. Our marriage completed the merger between the two companies and ensured that my father could continue receiving treatment. Alexander believed I had used my father's illness and the patent to force him into the marriage. So he decided to give me everything except the one thing a husband was supposed to give his wife. I looked at him. "Do you really have to see her tonight?" His brow furrowed. "Aaron, I don't want to waste time on a pointless argument. Sophia just came back to the country. She has no one in New York she can depend on." "She has you," I said. "What do I have?" He was silent for 2 seconds. Those 2 seconds were enough. I finally heard the answer. In his mind, I did not need comfort, and I would never leave. I was a wife pinned inside the Grant estate by a marriage contract, my father's medical bills, and 2 families' business interests. I was the woman who would always leave a light on, no matter how late he came home. His phone lit up. A message from Sophia appeared on the screen. I saw only one line: "I'm waiting at the restaurant we used to love." Alexander's expression softened instantly. As though afraid I might make a scene, he took a black card from his wallet, placed it on the table, and pushed it toward me. "Buy whatever you want. There is no limit. Go shopping, book a spa, meet a friend." Then his voice turned colder. "Just don't follow me tonight, and don't go looking for Sophia. Don't ruin our dinner." Our anniversary meal was already dying on the table, but he was warning me not to ruin his evening with another woman. I stared at the card and remembered the day before our wedding. My father had been lying in a hospital bed, gripping my hand and apologizing over and over. The Grant family had agreed to cover his continued treatment and extend Carter Industries' debt. In return, I had to marry Alexander and place the patent inside the merger agreement. I had refused 3 times. The last time, the Grant family's attorney asked whether the hospital would continue advancing treatment if Carter Industries declared bankruptcy the following morning. I signed. Alexander never asked whether I had wanted the marriage. He saw only the completed merger and Sophia's departure, and he gave all of his anger to me. For 2 years, I memorized his preferences, repaired the fractures in his family relationships, and stayed beside him all night when he had a fever. I locked away my own business plan and tried to become a wife no one could criticize. I believed that if I was patient enough, he would eventually understand that I had not married him for money. In that moment, I finally understood something simple. A man who had chosen not to see me would not suddenly notice me because I stood there longer. I picked up the black card. No matter how much I spend what you like. He glanced at the time again. The Grants can afford it. Including everything that makes me happy tonight? He did not understand what I meant. As long as you don't bother me. I nodded. I picked up the silver gift box, but I did not hand it to him. I returned it to the drawer and blew out the candles. All right, I said. Enjoy your date. He seemed surprised by my calm, but his driver was already waiting. He turned and left without looking back. The moment the door closed, I stood alone in the silent dining room and felt something inside my chest break for good. I did not cry. I threw the cold steak into the trash, put the wine back in the cabinet, and went upstairs to remove the blue dress I had worn for him. 10 minutes later, I was dressed in a white silk blouse, black leather pants, and a long coat. I pulled my hair into a high ponytail. The woman in the mirror was pale, but for the first time in years, her eyes were clear. I called a number I had not dialed in 2 years. After 3 rings, a laughing male voice answered. Aaron Carter? I assumed Mrs. Grant deleted me from her contacts a long time ago. Noah, I said, staring at my reflection. Does your entertainment company still handle private events? Noah Bennett had been my closest friend in college and my former business partner. After graduation, he built an events and entertainment company. I abandoned our business plan on the eve of my wedding. That depends on the event, he said carefully. I want to throw myself an anniversary party. Where is your husband? Having dinner with his first love. The line went quiet for 2 seconds. I need music, champagne, male dancers, and enough good-looking performers to fill a room. I don't want anyone to touch me. I just want tonight to stop belonging to them. Noah muttered a curse. Then he laughed. Send me the address. By the end of tonight, everyone will know which man was foolish enough to miss his own wife. I went to 5th Avenue first. I entered a couture boutique whose windows I had stopped in front of more times than I could count and bought a silver white gown worth $120,000. The sales manager recognized me and politely asked whether she should contact Mr. Grant to confirm the charge. I placed the black card on the counter. No. He personally told me to spend whatever I wanted. When the transaction was approved, I felt none of the guilt I had expected. For the first time in 2 years, I had made a decision without first wondering whether Alexander would be displeased. I bought heels, a pair of diamond earrings, and a red handbag. The earrings were expensive, but I did not calculate their resale value or ask whether they were appropriate for a Grant family event. I simply liked them. The first payment alert reached Alexander just as he sat down in a French restaurant. His assistant told me the details much later. Sophia sat across from him in an ivory cashmere dress, her eyes faintly red. Alexander glanced at the $120,000 charge, then placed his phone face down on the table. The second alert came from a jeweler, $180,000. The third came from the hotel, a presidential suite and a rooftop ballroom, $150,000. The fourth was a $200,000 deposit for the private band and dancers. His phone began vibrating without pause. Sophia asked whether something was wrong at the company. No, he said. Aaron is using the card. Sophia lowered her eyes. It is your anniversary. You left her alone. She must be hurt. You really didn't have to stay with me. I'm used to being alone. She made it sound as though she was defending me, while carefully reminding him that I was spending his money to express my anger. Let her spend, he replied. The Grants can afford it. I do not know what else they discussed, and by then I no longer cared. At 10:30, the hotel's rooftop floor came alive beneath the lights. Noah had brought a jazz band, bartenders, and 12 contracted male dancers. They wore black shirts and tailored trousers. They were polite, professional, and never once made me uncomfortable. Noah arrived last with an absurdly large bouquet of red roses. When I stepped out of the dressing room, he whistled. The silver-white gown traced my figure, and beneath the lights my shoulders looked as though they had been carved from ice. I was not wearing my wedding ring. I wore only the earrings I had bought for myself. Noah stared at me for several seconds before his smile faded. Have you really decided to stop waiting for him? Tonight, I have only made one decision. I took the roses. I am going to make myself happy first. The band began to play. Champagne corks flew. The 12 dancers performed in front of the glass walls, with the whole of Manhattan shining behind them. At first, I sat stiffly in the center of the sofa, gripping my glass with both hands. Some part of me still felt like an intruder in my own life, as though joy required my husband's permission. Then one of the dancers held out his hand and invited me to join them. I shook my head. He did not insist. He stepped back and, with the others, gave me an exaggerated gentleman's bow. Everyone laughed. So did I. It was a real laugh, not the careful curve Mrs. Grant had practiced for cameras. Noah told the photographer to capture the moment. He said I should remember that I had not been abandoned that night. I had walked out of a house where love did not exist. At 11:07, the hotel system sent the primary cardholder an authorization notice for entertainment services. A few seconds later, a manager mistakenly emailed Alexander a confirmation photo from the event. In the picture, I sat among 12 handsome men with champagne in my hand. Noah was leaning down to tell me that one of my earrings had come loose. From the angle of the photograph, his face seemed dangerously close to mine. Alexander called 7 times. I did not answer once. When the 8th call came, I turned off my phone. 20 minutes later, the rooftop doors flew open. The music had just reached its final note. Every head turned. Alexander stood in the doorway, his black coat unfastened and his breathing faster than usual. His eyes moved over my gown, the men around me, and finally Noah's arm resting along the back of the sofa. I had never seen him so angry. Everyone out, he said in a low, dangerous voice. No one moved. Noah slowly set down his drink. Mr. Grant, this is a private venue reserved and paid for by Miss Carter. You have no authority to dismiss her guests. Alexander stared at him. She is my wife. I rose to my feet. So tonight you finally remembered? He came toward me. Do you have any idea what you're doing? Of course. I handed my glass to a server. I'm celebrating my anniversary. You have your first love. I have the performers I paid to be here. It seems fair. Fair. His gaze swept the room. You use my money to surround yourself with men, and you call that fair? I watched him for several seconds, then laughed. For 2 years, you never touched me. You missed every important day, and you refused to let me ask about Sophia. Now you storm into this room, claim the rights of a husband, and accuse me of being unfaithful. I stepped closer and lowered my voice. Alexander, don't you think you remembered that title too late? His expression darkened. At least I never did anything this humiliating while we were married. Noah started to speak, but I lifted a hand to stop him. I picked up the folder from the table and pushed it into Alexander's chest. Performance contracts, venue agreement, employment terms, and insurance documents. There were no private escorts and no inappropriate services. The only humiliating thing that happened tonight was a husband taking his first love to dinner on his anniversary, then panicking because his wife looked too happy without him. Alexander scanned the first pages, then looked at me. You spent all this money just to make me angry? No. I removed my wedding ring and placed it on top of the contracts. I spent it to wake myself up. For the first time, his expression changed. I walked around him toward the dressing room. Instinctively, he caught my wrist. I stopped and looked back. Once, a single voluntary touch from him would have felt like hope. That night, it only made me tired. Let go. He released me as though my skin had burned him. You gave me the card, I said. I will take responsibility for the bill. As for our marriage, we will discuss that tomorrow. At 9 the next morning, I entered Alexander's office on the top floor of Grant Group headquarters. He had not slept. Faint shadows darkened the skin beneath his eyes. He sat behind his desk with the rigid posture of a man who had spent the entire night preparing accusations. I did not give him time to begin. I placed 2 documents in front of him. One was an itemized record of the previous night's charges. The other was a divorce agreement. The instant he read the title, his face hardened. What game are you playing now? This is not a game. I set a pen beside his hand. I am waiving most of the property the Grant family transferred during our marriage. I am asking only for the 12% of Carter Industries that originally belonged to me and the old house in Brooklyn that my mother left me. My attorney has reviewed every clause. He did not open the agreement. Because I had dinner with Sophia last night? Not because of last night. Because of every day in the last 2 years. Last night merely forced me to admit that patience was never going to earn your love. His eyes dropped to my bare ring finger. So now you're running to Noah? This has nothing to do with Noah. You were with him last night. You always assume that a woman leaves one man only because she has found another. I met his gaze. Maybe I simply want myself back. His jaw tightened. I understood why he did not believe me. He had always assumed I lacked the means to leave. My father's treatment, Carter Industries' debt, and the Grant family's influence had all been tied to our marriage. But my father had completed his final treatment 6 months earlier. Royalties from the Carter patent were now enough to repay the company's remaining debt. I had never told Alexander because, at the time, I was still waiting for our marriage to become real. Now I finally had a way out. I won't sign, he said. I did not argue. I simply took back my copy of the papers. You can delay it. You cannot change the outcome. Aaron. His voice stopped me at the door. Do not threaten me with divorce. You know that tactic will not work. I turned around. This is not a threat. A threat is meant to obtain something. I no longer want anything from you. That afternoon, I moved out of the Grant estate. I took my clothes, several boxes of books, my mother's photo albums, and the half-finished business plan I had written before the wedding. I left the silver gift box in the dining room drawer. The housekeeper offered to arrange a car. I refused. I rented an ordinary sedan and loaded the bags into the trunk myself. I did not look back when I drove away from the house where I had lived for 2 years. I later learned that Alexander returned that evening and stood for a long time in the empty dining room. There was no dinner waiting to be reheated, no light left on for him, and no reminder on the entry table about the following day's schedule. When he opened the walk-in closet, he discovered that most of my side was empty. I had not even taken our wedding photographs. He thought I would wait for him to come after me. So he did not call. The next evening, he attended a charity gala with Sophia. He also instructed his assistant to deliver to her hotel a sapphire set that had originally been commissioned for me. When I arrived at the ballroom, Sophia was wearing it for the cameras. She saw me, looked briefly surprised, then tightened her arm around Alexander's. She wanted me to understand that she had finally stepped into the place I once occupied. I was not wearing the silver white gown. I wore a simple black dress and a pair of pearls that had belonged to my mother. Noah stood beside me. She's wearing your jewelry. It was never mine, I said calmly. Alexander never gave it to me. It makes no difference who wears it. Before the auction began, a 50-year-old women-owned garment workshop suddenly lost its principal sponsor. Unless it obtained new orders within a week, more than 40 employees would lose their jobs. The organizers knew I had studied business management and asked whether I could contact Grant Group. I did not approach Alexander. Instead, I asked the workshop director 3 questions: the volume of remaining orders, the depreciation of the equipment, and the age range of the employees. As she answered, I thought about the silver white gown, the woman laughing in the party footage, and the business proposal I had locked away before my wedding. The proposal had been called Reclaim. It was never meant to sell expensive clothing alone. Its purpose was to create products, employment, and practical choices for women whose lives had been narrowed by dependence, marriage, or circumstance. I had always told myself I would revive the idea once my marriage became stable. The marriage never gave me a beginning. The ridiculous party did. I proposed that Reclaim purchase the workshop's first production run through advance orders and bring its employees into a new supply chain. Noah contacted media partners and digital retailers. 2 investors at the gala agreed to provide bridge financing. Before the evening ended, we had our first letters of intent. When the applause began, I stood beside the stage without using the title Mrs. Grant and without looking at Alexander. But I knew he was watching me. Sophia noticed too. She touched his arm and spoke loudly enough for me to hear. She seems to have a new life already. Perhaps you should let her go. It sounded compassionate. Before the night ended, however, she approached me alone and lightly touched the sapphire necklace at her throat. "This set is beautiful," she said with a smile. "Alexander told me the original measurements did not suit you." I looked at her. "Then it suits you now." She had expected anger. Her smile faltered. "You truly don't mind?" "I used to mind many things," I said. "I no longer want to waste the energy." As I walked past her, she spoke quietly. "Some positions cannot be recovered once you leave them." I did not stop. "Good. I have no intention of going back." Reclaim did not become successful overnight. For the first 3 months, Noah and I worked 16-hour days. We recut the footage from the hotel party, but we did not pretend it had been a carefully planned advertising campaign. The video showed me sitting stiffly at first, then laughing for real. It did not accuse any man. It simply told women that they did not need permission to celebrate themselves. The silver-white gown appeared for only a few seconds. In the final shot, I placed my wedding ring on a table and opened a door. The video reached far more people than we expected. Some said I had wasted my husband's money. Some called me a rejected society wife. Others asked, seriously, when our products would be available. 3 months later, we completed our first pre-sale. 6 months later, Reclaim closed its first funding round. After 1 year, our products were stocked in more than 20 stores across New York and Los Angeles. The workshop that had nearly closed expanded production, and every employee kept her job. I did not reimburse every charge from the black card. The gown, the earrings, and the party were genuine anniversary gifts to myself. I refused to apologize for my own happiness. But once Reclaim received funding, I repaid the hotel venue, the production team, and every other expense that could reasonably be treated as a company cost. I sent the money with interest to Alexander's personal account. The transfer note contained one sentence: "Thank you for giving me the courage to begin my new life that night." The first time Alexander came to see me in Brooklyn, my mother's old house was under renovation. I was wearing faded jeans and standing in the yard with an architect, discussing the shared workspace planned for the first floor. Alexander's car stopped at the curb. He did not ask his driver to pull into the property. "I repaid the money," I said. "You didn't need to come and collect it." "I didn't come for the money." "Then did you come to sign?" His expression tightened. "Must every conversation lead back to the divorce?" "It is the only matter between us that remains unfinished." He looked around. The first floor would become offices for women starting businesses. The second would provide temporary housing. The basement would contain legal and financial counseling rooms. "What are you trying to build here?" he asked. "A place to begin again. For women like you? For women trapped by financial control, trapped in marriages, or temporarily left without choices." His posture changed. "I never forbade you from working." I looked at him steadily. "You did not lock the door. You convinced me that walking through it would cost my father his treatment, Carter Industries its survival, and whatever little respect the Grant family gave me." I paused. Control does not always require an order. Sometimes it only requires making a person believe she has nowhere else to go. He was silent for a long time. "I didn't know you felt that way." "Because you never asked." When he left, He placed the silver gift box on the front step. I did not open it until that night. The restored cuff link lay inside. Beside it was a card containing only 2 lines. I see you now. I'm sorry I looked too late. I closed the box and did not answer. Being seen too late did not erase what had happened before. Sophia's first attempt to destroy Reclaim came just as we were preparing to sign a national distribution agreement. Several photographs from the anniversary party suddenly appeared online. They had been carefully cropped. In every frame, 12 men surrounded me, and Noah's mouth appeared almost pressed to my ear. The headline read, "Grant Wife Uses Husband's Black Card TO by Male Companions." Within hours, the story was trending. Our distribution partner suspended negotiations. Reporters gathered outside the Brooklyn house. Some customers demanded that we refund their deposits. Grant Group was publicly traded, and Alexander was both its chief executive and the family heir. The marriage scandal quickly began affecting the company's share price. That evening, he came to my office. His first words were, "Suspend all public activity." I was reviewing the hotel contracts with our attorney. I looked up. "You think I should hide?" "It is the fastest way to contain the damage. Once the attention fades, my public relations team can handle it." "How?" I asked. "Will they say I was emotionally unstable?" "Admit the photographs are real, then allow everyone to believe you were the innocent husband humiliated by his wife." "I didn't say that. But your first response was not to ask who leaked the photographs or whether I had evidence. It was to tell me to be quiet." I closed my laptop. 2 years ago, I might have obeyed you. I will not now. "This affects more than you," he said. "It affects Grant Group." Then sign the divorce papers. From the day our legal relationship ends, my reputation will no longer be a Grant Group asset. His face went cold. "Why must you push everything to the extreme?" I stood and faced him. "Because whenever I stop before the edge of the cliff, you fail to see me." At noon the next day, I went live. I did not cry. I did not recite every humiliation in my marriage. I released the hotel agreement, the dancers' employment contracts, the complete event footage, and the payment records. In the uncropped video, Noah was not kissing me. He was warning me that my earring had come loose. The so-called male companions had performed contracted dance and entertainment services throughout the evening. I did not deny that I had used the black card to buy the gown, the earrings, and the party. My husband placed that card in my hand, I told the camera. He told me to spend whatever I wanted, on the condition that I not interrupt his date with his first love. I spent money on myself. I did not purchase anyone's body, and I did not betray my marriage. Finally, I displayed the technical trace obtained by our attorneys. The photographs had been downloaded from an internal hotel backup account using the network of the company that employed Sophia's personal assistant. I did not directly accuse Sophia. Instead, I said, "A photograph does not destroy a marriage. A marriage is destroyed when someone gives a third person the power to wound his wife." Public opinion turned almost immediately. The dancers and staff released their contracts. The hotel issued an apology. The national retailer resumed negotiations. After the broadcast, Alexander sent me a message. "You handled it well." I did not respond. He had finally recognized my ability. I no longer needed his recognition. That evening, Alexander confronted Sophia. Much later, he told me everything they said. At first, Sophia denied any connection to the photographs. Then she cried and claimed her assistant had acted only to defend Alexander. She said she could not bear watching me humiliate him while still using his name, and she could not bear losing him again. Alexander asked who had truly forced her to leave 2 years earlier. Sophia said I had threatened her with the marriage agreement. According to her, I had warned that the Grant family would destroy her career unless she disappeared. I had never met her. For the first time, Alexander did not accept her tears as proof. He demanded the old emails and financial records. She said they were gone. He reopened the entire history of our marriage. What he found was harder to accept than anything he expected. The Grant family had given Sophia money, but the agreement bore her signature. The money had not been paid to force her into exile. It had funded her move to Europe. After accepting it, she cut off contact willingly. When her overseas investments later failed, she forged emails and blamed me for her departure. At the same time, Alexander located a recording of a meeting between his father and Carter Industries' attorney. In that recording, I rejected the marriage 3 separate times. The final time, my voice asked if I refuse, "Will you truly stop paying for my father's treatment?" Richard Grant answered, "There is no free kindness in business." Alexander later told me he sat alone in his dark study and listened to the recording throughout the night. For 2 years, he had believed I used a patent and my father's illness to trap him. He punished me with coldness because he thought he had been traded. He had never considered that I was the one who had no choice. At last, he signed the divorce agreement. At our attorney's office, he pushed the papers across the table. I checked every signature, then closed the folder. "Thank you," I said. He stared at me. "That's all. What did you expect? At least tell me you hate me." I was quiet for a moment. "I did hate you once," I said. Then I realized hatred also requires keeping you in my heart. I no longer want to reserve that space for you. After the divorce became final, Alexander ordered Grant Group to release a statement confirming that the party had been a lawful private event and accepting personal responsibility for the controversy surrounding our marriage. He ended every investment project involving Sophia and gave the evidence of her forged emails and manipulated photographs to his attorneys. The press began calling his behavior an attempt to win his wife back. When he sent flowers, I distributed them among the office staff. When he offered to invest in Reclaim, I refused. When he asked to attend the opening of the Carter New Beginning Center, I gave him an ordinary guest seat. He did not force his way into my office again. He did not use his family or the press to pressure me. On several occasions, he donated anonymously to our legal aid fund. I knew where the money came from, but I never thanked him publicly. Doing the right thing was not currency he could exchange for forgiveness. One night, Noah asked me, "If he truly changes, will you go back?" I was revising samples for our next collection and did not look up. Watching him change is not the same as returning. He leaned against the desk and remained silent for a while. "And what about me?" I raised my eyes. Noah had stood beside me through the worst night of my life. He had also taken risks when Reclaim was at its weakest. I valued him deeply, but I would not mistake gratitude for love. "You deserve someone who loves you completely," I said. "Not someone who has only just walked out of the ruins and is still learning how to trust love." He gave me a crooked smile. "At least you didn't make me wait 2 years for the answer." We did not lose each other. He remained my closest partner. We simply stopped pretending that every profound friendship had to become a romance. The final crisis still came from the black card. As Reclaim prepared for its second funding round, a set of falsified financial records was anonymously delivered to the press and securities regulators. The documents alleged that, during my marriage, I had misappropriated Grant Group funds, used a corporate black card to pay for my private party, and transferred additional money into Reclaim's accounts. Because Grant Group was publicly traded, the accusation went far beyond a marriage scandal. If proven, it meant corporate theft and financial fraud. The evidence looked convincing. The payment dates, hotel invoices, and Reclaim's registration records had been arranged into a neat timeline. There was even an authorization document bearing my electronic signature. Sophia had chosen a smarter way to attack me. She no longer claimed I had been unfaithful. She wanted the world to believe that every success I achieved had been stolen from my husband. Grant Group's board quickly proposed a solution. If I admitted that I had misunderstood the nature of the card, repaid all charges, and stepped down from Reclaim's management, the company would classify the matter as a domestic financial dispute rather than pursue criminal allegations. In other words, they wanted to sacrifice me to protect the Grant family's share price. Richard Grant sent an attorney to meet with me. "Ms. Carter, this is a dignified exit," the attorney said, pushing an agreement across the table. "You would retain part of your equity and face no further investigation." I turned to the last page and found the clause requiring me to surrender permanent control of Reclaim. "Please tell Mr. Grant that I signed one unfair agreement 2 years ago to save my father," I said, closing the document. I will not sign another. At the same time, Alexander was summoned before the board. He later described the meeting under oath at the public hearing. Richard told him that although the black card had been an additional card connected to Alexander's personal account, 2 charges had once been paid through Grant Group's administrative account. If the board insisted those payments involved corporate assets, it would be difficult for me to prove immediately that I had not knowingly misused company funds. They ordered Alexander to remain silent. If the board sacrificed his former wife, the company's acquisition and share price could be protected. Alexander asked one question. Who placed the card in her hand? That is irrelevant, his father said. It is relevant to me. On the day of the board vote, Alexander projected the complete cardholder agreement, personal banking records, and hotel authorizations onto the conference room screen. The black card did not belong to Grant Group. It was an unlimited additional card guaranteed by Alexander's personal assets. 2 expenses had passed through the corporate administrative account only because his office had incorrectly categorized the reimbursement. My electronic signature had been copied from an event authorization form altered by Sophia's assistant. Then Alexander released the most important piece of evidence, an audio recording. It came from the estate's security system on the night of our anniversary. His voice filled the boardroom, unmistakable and cold. Buy whatever you want. There is no limit. Just don't interrupt me tonight. Everyone heard that he had given me the card willingly. Alexander told the board that the accounting error came from his office and that any liability created by the card belonged to him. Richard asked whether he understood that making the records public would delay the acquisition and cause the board to question his ability to lead Grant Group. I understand, Alexander said. You are willing to destroy your inheritance for a woman who has already divorced you? I'm not doing this to win her back, Alexander replied. I'm doing it because she should not be forced to pay another price that belongs to the Grant family. The board demanded his resignation as chief executive. He signed it. That afternoon, he appeared alone at a press conference. He did not describe his decision as a sacrifice, and he did not make a public declaration of love. No company should protect its leadership by transferring blame to the person most easily doubted, he said. I personally authorized the black card. The accounting errors came from my office. Aaron Carter did not misuse corporate funds. I watched the entire broadcast from my office in Brooklyn. Noah stood behind me. This time, at least, he did the right thing. Yes, I said. It was the first time I had spoken about Alexander without anger. Sophia was eventually charged with falsifying financial records, unlawfully obtaining account information, and defamation. Outside the courthouse, she cried to reporters that I had destroyed her life. A reporter asked whether I wished to respond. Everyone is responsible for the choices they make, I said. That includes me, and it includes her. After losing his position at Grant Group, Alexander did not return to his father. He sold part of his personal holdings and opened a small corporate risk consulting firm. Its first office had 6 employees, no private elevator, and no full-floor view of Manhattan. For the first time in his life, he had to meet clients himself, revise contracts, and handle employee insurance. A year later, I ran into him backstage at an entrepreneurship forum. He wore an ordinary charcoal suit and carried a stack of documents in his arms. We looked at each other across the hallway for a few seconds before he spoke. Congratulations. I heard Reclaim just reached its 100th store. Thank you, I said. I heard your firm signed its first long-term clients. Only 3. He smiled. It is harder than I expected. I smiled too. It was the first unguarded smile I had given him since the divorce. He did not use the moment to move closer or tell me he missed me. He simply picked up a page that had slipped from his stack and stepped aside to let me pass. Reclaim took 3 years to reach the eve of a public offering. During those years, we survived delayed orders, failed funding rounds, supply chain emergencies, and countless people questioning whether I deserved my success. Some continued to credit everything to the black card. Eventually, I stopped rushing to deny it. The card had changed my life, but not because it had no spending limit. It changed me because, on the most humiliating night of my marriage, it showed me that anything another person gave me could be withdrawn at any time. Only the life I rebuilt for myself truly belonged to me. My mother's Brooklyn house was officially renamed the Carter New Beginning Center. Every year, it provided temporary housing, legal counseling, and entrepreneurship training to hundreds of women. The silver-white gown was displayed in the lobby of Reclaim's headquarters. There was no price beside it and no mention of Alexander. The plaque contained only one sentence. That night, I lost a husband I had never truly possessed and found myself again. After the celebration marking Reclaim's upcoming public offering, my assistant handed me a black envelope. There was no check inside and no bank card. There was only a plain invitation. Saturday, 3 p.m. The cafe by the Brooklyn waterfront. No driver, no private room, and no gift. Only a man asking for the chance to know you again. It was signed Alexander. I stared at it for a long time before placing it in my handbag. At 3 o'clock on Saturday, I went to the cafe. I did not go because I wanted to remarry him, and I did not go to give him the answer he had been waiting for. I went because I wanted to know whether, without a contract binding us as husband and wife, we could sit across from each other as two ordinary people. Alexander was already there. He had no driver, no flowers, and no black card. There were only two ordinary cups of coffee on the table. One was the unsweetened latte I used to order. He stood and seemed about to pull out my chair, then stopped when he saw my expression. "Thank you for coming," he said. I only agreed to one conversation. I know. We talked about his company, the New Beginning Center, and my father's health. Neither of us mentioned remarriage. Neither of us asked for forgiveness. An hour later, the server placed the check on the table and asked who would be paying. Alexander reached for it, but I had already taken a card from my handbag. It was not black. It was an ordinary bank card issued in my own name. I placed it on the tray and looked at him. This time, I pay for myself. He slowly withdrew his hand and nodded. As you should. When I left the cafe, the New York wind swept across the river. I did not know whether we would meet again. I did not know whether I would ever fall in love with him or with anyone else. But uncertainty no longer frightened me. Forgiveness did not mean returning. One conversation did not mean handing my life back to him. Once, I had placed my happiness in the hands of a man and waited to see whether he would love me. Now I had a business, friends, a door I could close whenever I chose, and the freedom to open another one when I was ready. The unlimited black card had expired long ago. But from the night I picked it up, I learned something far more valuable than how to spend money. I did not need anyone's permission to choose myself.